fuel. And groceries. The morning vice. And all the maintenance that keeps a car going in between times. Paper cut bills. Like little piranhas tearing at the turbo money. So you've got to run a tight fist, pinch those pennies. Thrift is the guarantor of the budget restoration. Spend just enough to get this part of the job done. And the wallet lives to make a parts order another day. So when it comes to buying tools, the smart money is spent only when a new tool is needed. How many 1,000-piece, 3 grand tool chests sit in empty garages, gathering dust? And when there's a big old screw compressor sitting in the corner pumping out more CFMs than an 80s hair salon, well, it'd be silly not to be running pneumatics. So this guy's been buying them, one by one, as and when a specific job needed a specific tool. Each one has its uses and its quirks. The latest one, though, is one of those tools that when you use it for the first time and realise the possibilities, it's like the missing piece of the puzzle slotting into place. It's not the die grinder itself, it's the bit sticking out of it that's the trick. Made of tungsten carbide, I call this one the pickle. Wizards use these to port and flow cylinder heads and inlet manifolds. Tungsten is harder than steel. There's a hardness scale of 1 to 10. Cheese is 1 and diamond is 10. Steel ranks around 4, titanium a 6, and tungsten carbide is a solid 9. 11 is a Chuck Norris. Seriously though, there is a scale and tungsten is right up there behind diamond. You can buy these bits from China for a few yo-yos, but I decided to sidestep the torture and go for the expensive ones. And they are expensive, like 25 or 30 quid each. I can't tell you if the cheaper ones are good, but I can tell you the expensive ones are incredible. One of these will grind through steel easily, spitting out tiny little shards of seemingly harmless metal, until you realise it's not only possible to get steel splinters, but your hands are full of them. You want gloves, long gloves, and not to spray grinder filings into every opening of your clothing for the sake of a YouTube video. To be fair, if you don't have an air compressor, these bits could be used in a cordless drill or any other machine with a chuck or collet on it. And there are cordless die grinders too. Anyway, I got this set. It's a kit of the 3 most commonly useful shapes, and they have allowed me to get into tiny little places, cut out metal and grind back welds, where before I had to leave ugliness. Last time, I made this steel 4mm thick. I was wrong. It's actually more like 3mm thick and likely originally 1/8 inch sheet. The thing is, on this side of the box section here, it's been heavily thinned out by delamination, and I couldn't leave it alone. I've cut out the bad section, and you can see when I measure it that it's actually lost over 1mm in places. It should be 3mm thick minimum. And my first cut didn't reach back far enough into good thick metal, so I made another pass, and you can see clearly the difference in thickness over just a short distance to where the rust wasn't deeply impacting the integrity of the steel. So, it's time to make the main repair, and if I was to copy the factory design as closely as possible, I'd be letting 3 pieces of metal back into this area to complete the repair. But to stop this part of the chassis from being a proven water trap, while keeping the seams and the weldings to the absolute minimum, a single folded section here would make a big difference. Here again, I was still trying to capture my welding in stop motion, and it didn't go well at all. Keep an eye on these welds later. I ground them back, using the divine power of the die grinder, and welded them properly off camera. That's better. At this point, a lesser man would avoid innuendo, but if you've ever wondered whether one day you might discover you love pipe, well, I can tell you it can come true. Because I love this pipe, all 5 meters of it, and it's an offcut at 5 meters by the way. It's got a 3/4 inch outer diameter and a 1/2 inch inner, and it's CDS, that's cold drawn seamless tube. Not too girthy at those dimensions, but this is the good stuff. And as luck would have it, I found it with just a few calls and only a 10-minute drive away. I don't think I've ever found something for this car that quickly or easily. So just remember, if you've hit a rough spell, that perfect piece of pipe could be just round the corner. Yeah, all that welding was just tacking to locate the new section of tube before final fixing. The levels of second guessing here were at an all-time high. Thankfully though, I'd built 2 extra layers of protection against error in here, just in case the main jig you've just seen was somehow out. First was the other jig, the one that locates the spring seat. I had built a rudimentary fence into that to locate one end of the tube to, and it all snugged up perfectly. Confidence growing. Second was a series of measurements I took with the calipers. 4 reference points on each end of the tube. And for the sake of brevity here, they all matched up perfectly. We're almost home dry. All I have to do now is make sure I don't make a badger's bum with the final welds. It's practice time. So this one's the first attempt. And when I flip it over, you see the difference the right angle, operator's comfort, and good light make to a weld. Well now, how do I get the right angle when the weld is on one end of a 3-meter chassis? Couldn't conceive a few weeks ago of being this side of the job. It was, in my head, a more demanding repair than anything that's gone before. At least that's to say, there was more at stake. So the spring seat has to go back, complete with convincing welds, and then we're there. Then we're in the future. The seat and chassis get a brushed on coat of 2-part epoxy primer and a rub down with a pad to take the sheen off it and key it for further coats after everything is back together. Just easier to get to it now rather than later. this hasn't gone too badly after all. Of course, it could be as crooked as a crash, but here's to never knowing. Hopefully. I'm over chassis work, that's for sure, but thankfully there's no guesswork left and the repair to the other side should be relatively painless. We're nearing time to spray this thing once and for all and start to bolt new suspension to it. Roll on the rolling chassis. Soup's funded by the support of patrons who keep me motivated and honest. I do patron-only videos about projects and answer questions on Patreon, and we'll be bringing more detail to those videos in future. If you'd like to be part of the crew who keeps the welding wire flowing and me off the streets, there's a link to my website in the description where you can choose a support option, buy clothing, or get in touch. And with that, I'd like to welcome and thank Chris Stevens, Michael Farmer, Maker Breaker, Greg McMullen, Sid O'Sullivan, James Burley, Mike Raverty, Eduardo Kaftansky, hey Eduardo, Classic and Clunker, Derek, I'm gonna take a punt that you're a bass. I hope it's a good one. Martin Spilners, Chuck Densmore, Nikolai Pedersen, Suna Langdal, Evan Cunningham, Graham Keenan, Carter Marshall, Land Scraper, James McFadgen, and Steve Williamson. Thank you, patrons, for leaving me the space to learn all this stuff. That's all until next time. Till then, remember what I said about pipe, and good luck.